Okay, hello and welcome to video 5.1 of Beginning App and 2D Game Development. Here we're going to describe how you should be grading the mini projects of your peers. The mini project was due today. It is April 1st, and it was due via the discussion section. You should have turned that in by now, and you should be ready to grade your peers' projects. So, just reminding everyone what the assignment was all about. We created a single user dungeon worth 100 points. It was actually due on April 1st, and that is today. And basically, the premise of this is you'd be playing a character in a fantasy world, and that world is going to be described to you via the text on the screen, and you'd be able to perform certain limited actions in the world. The actions that you should have coded up are go and take. The nouns would have been south, north, east, and west, as well as a couple items that you were required to add. And for extra credit, you could have added a storyline. You could have also added more than two items rather, and you could have created more than one room, and you needed to embed the storyline into the project that has more than two rooms. And you could have performed the following in X and A. You could have also created NPCs that'll talk to you, and you could have created images that would load for each room if you did do this in X and A, which is worth a whole lot of extra credit points. But the basics is you need to be able to start, have a description of the room given, a prompt asking the user to enter in one of the actions, as well as the noun, and then have the game respond to that input, and then a new room displayed similar to step 2, and you need to be able to issue the take command. I completed this project myself, just a very basic version. I did a little bit of the extra credit. I lacked time to go any further, but I just wanted to create sort of an example that gives you guys kind of a little bit above average type of a rubric grade for something, so you can kind of see where it's at and adjust your grading from there. So basically here, the first thing you should do when you're evaluating each other's code is, of course, you should go to the discussion section that you're in. So whatever discussion section you're in, you go to that. Here's Team 7, so if I was in Team 7, I would go here. I would find the applicable project files. There's two of them in this particular team. I would download those, open them up, and start taking a look. So let's sort of pretend we've done that, and we're looking at SUD mini project. This actual mini project is inside of SUD mini project end. That's the one that I created. This is the one that I'm going to grade, and basically this has the same structure as the prior SUD mini project, the advanced inheritance tutorial that I went through earlier in week 2. So the first thing I like to do usually when I'm evaluating code is just go ahead and run it, see how it works. So I'm going to press run here, and okay, so I've entered the world of SUD. We're standing in the living room. There's a TV here. This room has the towel. You can do something now, type of verb, then a noun. So I'm going to say go south. Okay, now I'm standing in the kitchen. It smells like Cheetos and Mountain Dew in here. This room has an envelope. Well, I want to take the envelope. Take envelope. And now I've got an envelope. I'm still standing in the kitchen. Still smells like Mountain Dew and Cheetos. And now Arthur Dent, who's our main character, he has an inventory now that's visible, and he has an envelope. So from here I could say go east. And now I'm standing outside, and there's a foreman of a bulldozer who's yelling at me. I'm going to drop the envelope here. Maybe it will appease the bulldozer driver. Unfortunately, no, he's still mad at me. But I have dropped the envelope, and that's probably a good amount of testing. I've tested that I can go either direction. I'm going to go back west. Now I'm standing in the kitchen again. I can go back north, and I'm back to the living room. I can take the towel. I can drop the towel. I can go back to the kitchen. I can go west this time. and now I'm in a forest. I don't know how the heck I got there, but I am in a forest, and there's birds and naturey type garbage all around. So anyway, that is basically it of the testing. I'm going to go ahead and exit. The next thing, and you don't have to do this in exact order, but the next thing I usually like to do is check out the design and see how closely it fit to the end product. My design is really easy in this case because it's basically the design I gave you um, for the uh, SUD. This is the mini project documentation that I basically set as your template forward. So my story was basically Arthur Dent. This is actually a story from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But assuming that this was a unique story, I would have graded this as fulfilling the requirements because it does have a story of some sort. And then also I have implemented the go and the take. In addition, I actually implemented a drop. So I would like to see that in the design documentation if I did add it. Here's one area where I might downgrade on the documentation because this particular document doesn't exactly reflect the actual in-game working mechanisms. So I'm sort of going to note that. But I'm just going to start creating kind of a running list of notes here. So game played well, all tests worked, some extra credit implemented, some items are not in the design documentation. So just sort of keeping some notes as I go along here. I've got my story, and here's the walkthrough. The game starts. A description of the start room is given. A console prompt asks you what you want to do, and then you can take. Okay, well, here's our design for the level. It looks like we've got all the rooms here, the living room, the kitchen, the outside, and the forest. We've got our towel, our envelope, and our bulldozer. It does look like the NPCs were required, the bulldozer driver was required to say something to the player to tell him to get out of the way. I did not have that in the one that I showed. The bulldozer driver just said he's mad at you. Didn't really say anything. We could have easily just changed that to say bulldozer driver yells at you and just had him yell at you each time you come into that room, and that would have fulfilled the requirements. But in this case, I'm missing it, so I'm going to write that down. Bulldozer driver yelling at you. We said he's mad, but he's not actually yelling at you when we played the game, so oh well, so missed that one. And items can be removed from room and added to player. So we've got that, and that's sort of me looking at just kind of eyeballing the requirements. Next up, I need to explain to you how to use rubrics. So we've kind of done a first pass evaluation through this project. Now, how do we actually use a rubric to grade this? Well, I put a rubric up under the submitting files and peer grading section, and here it is. There's 3 categories. There's design, implementation, documentation, and flexibility. So the design, basically the unsatisfactory would be there's no additional design beyond the boilerplate game. We do have a little bit of design beyond the boilerplate in this case because we created the story of Arthur Dent, etc., and so it's probably not unsatisfactory. Bare minimum would be we have at least one new feature present in the design. Well, it looks like we didn't implement a design for dropping, so there's definitely one new feature in the design, and in addition there's multiple rooms, so I would consider that a new feature as well. And I think that would move it up onto the satisfactory effort and performance, where we say, are there a few new features present? Yeah. Okay, so it's probably a pretty solid concept of additions to the game, so I'd say that's satisfactory. In order to get above and beyond in the design category, it would have to be a full-fledged modification to the existing boilerplate with several features and sound reasoning for those choices. So full-fledged modification would include things like maybe you've put in combat, maybe you've put in NPCs talking to you and saying a different allotment of things. Some of that's hinted at in the actual extra credit in the write-up. For example, saying things to you when you issue the talk command. That might have been an above and beyond situation in the case of design, but instead I'm going to give this grade design equals satisfactory. Next up, I have to take a look at the implementation. So unsatisfactory would be it doesn't even run or compile. Well, that's not the case. We just saw it running and it tested fine. Coding styles loosely followed would be bare minimum. So yeah, there's basically tabination here. We've got some loose style in that the name is used, item name is used here. We've got some set names, get names, so that's kind of a standard way of doing it. The SUD itself has lowercase, kind of a mixed match of uppercase method names starting with an uppercase and lowercase method names. So that's a little bit non-standard and probably could be better, but for the most part it's loosely followed. So the next question you have to ask yourself for it to be satisfactory, it means that any new features should work as part of the larger system. Well, we tested everything we could think of and it pretty much fully works, so that's satisfactory. Again, for a full-fledged modification, that would be considered above and beyond and earn the 100% in this category, where you would also want to do additional modularization to the code. Modularization would basically come in the form, in this case, of taking some of this sud.cs file and breaking it up. This turns out to be a pretty long file, so you'd probably want to break that up into multiple files. Parser, or not parser, but sud, that is, turns out to be pretty long. Maybe you'd have a separate file like to load in the text for what the various room names are. Maybe you would change this to handle the verbs better, like the exit verbs and the drop verbs, and the exit, go, and take would basically have to be changed to each be their own method, perhaps. Something like that would be further modularization, and that would be above and beyond the Call of Duty type thing. But as it is, I think this is pretty much straight on a satisfactory effort and performance situation. So I'm going to write down satisfactory for that one. As far as documentation goes, well, we did have a problem with that. Some of our new feature set wasn't documented. So unsatisfactory is no documentation submitted, or the documentation submitted is incomplete and doesn't cover the full game. Bare minimum is the full feature set of the app game is covered in the documentation. Minimum boilerplate extensibility is used. Well, that is the case in this situation because the new stuff that was added was above and beyond the Call of Duty stuff that was done for extra credit. For example, the drop command. However, the take command was present in the design documentation, the template that I had. So that would be bare minimum, as well as a story was present, etc. So I think we're bare minimum in that case. Satisfactory would be that the full feature set is covered in addition to new features. So any new features, anything you added is in the documentation, and that those new features are coded within the OOP style, the object-oriented style. So that's probably not satisfactory in this case. I would call that bare minimum. And a full modification would basically also include, for the above and beyond in the documentation, would include a technical design doc. We've talked about how those are a little bit from design docs, as well as any add-ons and enhancements made. So now that I've looked at that, I'm ready to go to Teammates and fill out my evaluation form. I'm going to be filling this out as my wife. This is just some sample team that I'm in, basically. With myself as well as one of our support staff, Dan Schrickle. So what we have to do is we have to basically transpose the notes that I took onto the response form for Teammates. So we should set this as for Ben Geisler's. We should say satisfactory effort and performance for design. We should say satisfactory for implementation. Oh, and actually, in this case, we're not being asked to provide additional documentation, so I'm getting away with the bare minimum in terms of the documentation. The next project will ask for documentation, so that is something to be aware of. But if you didn't provide that, as I didn't, I provide very bare minimum, then you will be fine. The third question is the overall grade. This would be just to give an overall rating, whether you think it's unsatisfactory, bare minimum, or satisfactory. I would give this an overall grade of a 3. This doesn't necessarily have to be an average of the two. If you feel that the implementation was so stellar, and maybe the implementation is satisfactory, but yet the design is unsatisfactory, you might be tempted to give either a bare minimum or satisfactory to that one, especially if the design is super stellar, then maybe you do give satisfactory. So again, this doesn't have to be a pure average. It's more of just like an overall feel of where the project is at. Is it a satisfactory performance, which would be 80%, a bare minimum, or unsatisfactory? Use these two categories to help guide your decision in terms of what the overall grade is. In most cases, they'll be averages, but they don't always have to be averaged out. And then we need to evaluate the extra credit that's given. So the way this is looking is, for this particular project, I would get 80 points because it's satisfactory, but then I'm going to get extra credit on top of it. So in this case, I did do some extra credit. Let's see what I did exactly. Well, I've got more than 2 rooms. I've got more than 2 items. And there's not really a storyline in the project that has more than 2 rooms. It doesn't really tell you anything about why you're going from room to room, so that's not really a story. And we didn't add the talk command. We didn't do it in XNA Game Studio. So we're going to be getting 7 points for that particular submission. So I'm going to say 7. This can range all the way up to 39. And I say save feedback. And that is it. And I go back there. I can always go back and edit my submission until the thing is closed. So if you've already graded your peers and then one of them turns in a last-minute submission, you can always go back and adjust that. It will be closing tonight, however. So that's pretty much it. I've now graded my peers. They'll be able to see once the submissions end. They'll be able to see how you've graded them, and you can go ahead and log out of Teammates. So that is it. And just as a reminder, Teammates is available on the course homepage. If you go to Content, under Software, Teammates is available. So if you go, this is just loading up, we go to Software Information, Teammates is a link down below there, so you can get there easy enough from within D2L. So that is it. We will see you for the next video.